Hello, everyone. It's Kate Stillman with the Yoga Healer podcast, and I'm here with my friend Kate O'Donnell of kateodonnell.yoga, and she's a new website, Ayurvedicliving.institute. And Kate and I like to have conversations every now and then about whatever's interesting to us. And today we're talking about the Instant Pot. That's right. And this is like that, like Ayurvedic cooking with the Instant Pot. And I think personally, I kind of get a kick out of like, what is Ayurvedic cooking? What are Ayurvedic foods? I'm sure like these questions come up a lot. So we're talking today, we'll both talk a little bit about how we use the Instant Pot, and Kate, because Kate's the cookbook writer, so she's all pro at this. I'm the hack. I'm like the mom CEO, make food fast hack, Ayurvedic style. We'll give you these different perspectives, and hopefully inspire you, dear listener, to make your own food at home. I think, Kate, you and I are probably in agreement with like, that's good and just and right.
Right. And that's Ayurvedic cooking, is home cooking.
So what can we start with that, Kate? Like just with so just a little context. I've been talking a lot in my community about the disease category called chronic inflammation, which is now considered to be the root cause of all the major diseases people are dying from. So heart disease, cancer, cardiovascular disease, respiratory diseases, autoimmune diseases. So we look at this really broad category, and what is home cooking versus buying prepared foods or eating out or buying foods, convenience foods? Like, where do you go with that in your awareness?
Like in relationship to inflammation?
Yeah. So inflammation and making food from scratch at home. Let's start there.
Right. Yeah. The interesting thing about inflammation, when we sort of translate that word into Ayurveda speak, we end up at Jvara, which is it's one of the earlier disorders that's talked about in the Chikitsa, or sort of therapy part of the texts, and it means fever, and it's like it's a problem of heat in the body. But the interesting thing about it is that it all starts with ama. So it's actually like really simple concepts that everyone already knows.
So let's start for those who don't know the concept of ama.
Yeah, so ama is it's toxins in the body, but more specifically, toxins that begin in the stomach. That's how the whole thing starts, in the stomach. When we don't digest something well, it kind of sits in the gut. And the body, being smart as it is, doesn't want to let it leave there and then have this undigested thing ranging around, in the rest of the digestive tract or in the bloodstream or whatever. So it sits and is held there in the stomach. And over time, the qualities of that undigested like food stuff, it's kind of like becomes very sludgy, and it gets like very sticky. I think if we want to like put it in people's minds, the thing to think about is how sticky it is. It gets like this, like an old dried out honey kind of a consistency, and it's sitting in the organ of the stomach, and it begins to sort of like vitiate or mess up the digestive fire, which sits at the bottom of the stomach. So that like everything that passes through the stomach has to pass through that fire and get like digested into this like, food nutrient precursor. And when you get ama sitting in the stomach, that process can't happen. And the thing about inflammation is that inflammation is a condition of long-term ama.
Long-term, not happening just from what's been going on lately.
Right, exactly. It has to have been in the gut for a long time, to the point where the body actually allows it to pass out of the gut. And that's how we end up, because then you've got this very sticky business, like that could go anywhere in the body. And that's why inflammation happens all over in different places for different people.
Yeah, let me throw that other word in, because and I'll put some links to these recent studies and there's different ways about talking about chronic inflammation. And one of the really common ways is systemic inflammation. So what Kate's just talking about is when it goes from localized in your stomach, which is maybe short term or acute, and then that doesn't stop. And so then it goes into the system and becomes systemic. Now it's bad business, right? Like now it's slowing down the function of all the cells at that point. I mean, it starts to.
Right. And it can kind of, it's like, think about how all of the nutrition and all of the blood, everything is like circulating throughout the entire body. So this ama then is kind of in the fluids that are circulating throughout the entire body, which is why we can get these kind of symptoms that are like aches, aches and pains and that kind of stuff. And it's the heat or the so-called fever happens when the body starts trying to get rid of that. So it's trying to burn it away, because that's what the body does to amas. It like burns it up. And so then we get this kind of burning situation that can be systemic. And then again, even the systemic situation, when that's chronic, then it can localize again into a weak area, and that like an organ. And that's when things start to look like very serious disease.
Yeah, then it differentiates, right, between like heart disease versus cancer, or a particular type of autoimmune disease that's targeting a particular gland in the body.
Exactly. So I love, Kate, that you're breaking down the whole samprapti of it, or the whole like A, B, C, D, so that we can see how this happened. And, I was recently treated in Panchakarma for Jwara. So like, I don't want people to think,
yeah, we're not immune.
Super unhealthy for this to happen, because
Yeah.
I'm pretty healthy, but I absolutely have had to clean out some ama that's kind of ranging in my body recently.
Yeah, me too. Amen.
Yep.
I mean, I would say in modern culture, that's just maintenance. Like that's just part of, right? And what we're going to do, you guys, we're going to tie this into Instapot, because the thing is, and I'm going to use an example from this week. I came down to Mexico. We went out to eat that night. I hadn't really eaten much that day. And unbeknownst to me, the guacamole had mayo in it. We went out to eat. Right. And I would never, like, it would never in a million, there's mayonnaise in my refrigerator. That's made by, because I live with other people that eat that a lot more than I do. But it would never occur to me to add mayo to an avocado. Like it just, nope. And to mix it in. So like the next day I could feel that sticky, heavy, like it was going nowhere. Right. So even after like 18 hours, I'm like, this has gone nowhere. So I mixed together. I looked in my fridge, which I hadn't gone grocery shopping yet. And there was a habanero and there was turmeric root from the last time I was down here. So I grated it up with some water and drank it. And then it started to break down some of that sticky stuff. My point in all this being, if we're eating out or if we're eating prepared foods a lot, we have so much less control over how sticky the stuff in our stomach gets. And if we are using an Instapot, or we're starting to do this, taking our health into the kitchen, we'll attune naturally to that which creates the feeling of both energy and lightness with eating. So yeah, do you want to talk just a little bit about like transitioning, like where the Instant Pot maybe is a great tool for transitioning to cooking more? I know for instance, even for my sister, who's a busy mom, she's got a great job. The Instant Pot helped her start making food at home more. It was like that. And she was going off last night. She didn't even know we were doing this interview today. And she was like, are you turned on to the Instant Pot? So do you want to just talk a little bit about where someone can maybe start with making a few really simple meals a week, or maybe making one meal a week at home?
Right. Yeah, definitely. Because as anybody who knows my cookbooks knows that I'm pretty simple. Like, I'm not a gourmand. I'm not a chef. The reason I write cookbooks is just to help people get in the kitchen and do simple stuff so they can feed themselves. And so that's what I've been doing with the Instant Pot. And the thing that's so cool, I think, and so helpful about the Instant Pot is that it doesn't need to be supervised. I think that's where it's helping so many people.
Yes, great point.
Pressure cooking is awesome. And I've been using an Indian pressure cooker for decades, but you really can't leave the room when it's going.
Oh no. Oh my gosh. I think we all have a story.
Yes, exactly. About like exploding
ceilings, about washing ceilings.
Yeah. Or, leaking or whatever. I tend to get like cumin seeds stuck in the little hole and then it sputters, and that kind of thing. So, I think the thing about cooking is that people between the prep, bringing things to a boil, checking it to make sure it's getting there. It's like when you have laundry in the dryer and it doesn't have a setting, it doesn't just dry. So you have to go back up and down the stairs like 4 times, which I just had to do today. And it's the thing about the Instant Pot is it takes all that away. Like all you need to do is put the food in it and then go do your thing. And if you need to like go drive your kids around, it's fine. Like I feel really safe about leaving it in the house and having it running. And so
right. There's not like the Instant Pot horror stories like there are the pressure cooker horror stories, even though it has that same exact function.
Right. It's super safe. And it is, what's also neat is you can slow cook in it and you can pressure cook.
Right. Yeah. And even saute.
Absolutely. Which I can share. I use it to heat food up as well.
Oh.
Which is pretty awesome. Yeah. Because that's a lot of question people come up with because when they start cooking, they're making soups a lot of the time in there and maybe they have leftover. And then there's the question about, how do we heat up our leftovers?
Yeah.
Without using a microwave, So I'll pull out the Instant Pot. I'll put the leftover food. I actually, when I have leftovers, you know how it has the stainless steel pot inside the big thing. I just take that pot out, I cover it with a plate, and I put it in the fridge when it's down. And then when I want to eat it the next day, I take that stainless steel pot, I put it back inside the machine and I put it on saute on low.
Yep.
And it warm, and I just have to stir it a couple times. It warms it up in like 10 minutes.
It's great.
It's awesome. So you don't even have to wash the pot.
You're not doing dishes twice. Yeah. I mean, and I think that really speaks to the other part of it is it's like the one, well, I mean, there's a few things we should talk about, like the one pot meal and like you were saying, like the simplification of cooking at home and part of it's prep and part of it's cleanup and all the rest. So let's start with a recipe or some like a place that someone could start. Let's be my sister. So 4 people, we're feeding 4 people. 2 of them are small
yeah. Which, I think making Kitchery in the Instant Pot is a good place to start. That's what I use it for all the time. And when I'm doing the Kitchery, I'll do a half cup of mung bean and a half cup of rice. I rinse them. I'm using the Instant Pot. I'm really not doing as much soaking. But because the pressure cooker drives the heat and the moisture like deep all the way into the grain or the bean, you don't have to worry about the soaking in the same way, which I find is nice because I don't always know what I'm going to want to eat tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so that not soaking, it's nice. I can just kind of like, how do I feel right now? And just make that thing without having to eat what I soaked, which happens to me a lot.
It does me too.
So I do a half cup of,
too much pre-planning. So it's like it can take away the spontaneity.
Exactly. And now that I'm like working from home, I'm home all the time. I can really like just decide what I feel like, and what I want to eat in that moment. And that is really special. That's really, really good. So a half a cup of the rice, a half a cup of the mung bean. And I tend to use the split yellow one more than the green one because it's prettier when it's done. That's your like traditional Kitchery. And a cup with 2 little people and 2 adults, you'll eat all of it. It'll be gone. People might want to do 3/4 cup of each.
Okay.
To be sure, I think if there's, to be sure you have enough food. So 3/4 cup, equal parts each. I rinse those really well because with the pressure cooker, you're not boiling off any of so you really want to make sure you like double or even triple rinse stuff. So I do rinse it. I rinse it right in the stainless steel pot. I pour it into a strainer. I do that a couple times. And then I add.
Do you want to just say what people are rinsing off with this? Because this is a common question with Kitchery.
It's like just impurities from the grain or from the bean.
Because it's been stored, right? It's like, so there's like a dust that accumulates, and it happens with all grain. Yeah,
exactly. Like I never not rinse anything. I always rinse everything because of that kind of dust. And when you cook it on the stovetop, it creates like a foam. You can see, you don't want to eat that. You can see it. Yeah. And that is a distinction with the Instant Pot, is that you can't boil off impurities. So you really do need to rinse. Yeah. Yeah. Great. So I do that right in the pot, in the stainless steel pot. Then I add a tablespoon of a spice mix, like turmeric, cumin, coriander, fennel, that kind of thing.
Like a curry.
Yeah, exactly. Like a heaping tablespoon. If people are a little squeamish about the spices, maybe not heaping, but just like a regular tablespoon. You don't want to put the salt in until the end, or the beans won't soften as well. And I like fresh ginger, especially in the wintertime. So I'll often mince up like a half of my thumb worth of fresh ginger, and I throw that in there. And I'll use 5 cups of water. So with the 3/4 cup of each, I'll use 5 cups of water. And then this is where I don't add the ghee at this phase. Okay. The turmeric's in there, so you'll have the orange color. But the reason I don't add the ghee, this is my choice, is because I find that the smell really gets into the rubber ring, and it's a lot harder to clean it. Yeah, so that's why I've stopped putting the oils into the pressure cooker, mainly because of that. And I don't love putting the oils at super high heat for a long time. Yeah, exactly. So I don't add the ghee in the beginning. And then you just put the top on, and I pressure cook the Kitchery for 15 minutes, which is a long time because I really like it creamy and soft. And I know people who do like 10 minutes and are happy with that. And the thing about... So
it's a texture choice at that point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the longer you're going to leave it in there in the pot, the creamier it gets. So my method is like, I rarely do the quick release of the pressure. I usually just leave it in the pot. Like I will put all this business in the pot at least an hour before I'm going to eat. And I just I pressure cook it for the 15 minutes, but listeners should know that it takes 20 minutes to come to pressure. Yeah. So you do have to be like prepared. You have to think of this an hour before you want to eat,
and that's the point. I mean, that's the whole point with this thing is like, you can put the stuff in the morning and come home from work and there's something that's ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not like you come home from work and you're like, great opportunity to use the Instapot. It's like, no, like I even find sometimes like cleaning up the night before, I can just like do all the rinsing and put all the stuff in and get it ready. And then the morning press go and then have dinner the next night.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. It's kind of like a little bit of it's like a little think ahead kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'll put everything in, go to bed, and then turn it on in the morning when
Yeah. And then the cook time is going to be less because the grains have soaked.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
But in any case, I think the point is that you're making is the longer it's in higher pressure, the creamier the grains become, the shorter, the crunchier they are. And let's talk a little bit about that in terms of Vata and Pitta and Kapha. And let's also now talk a bit about like the one pot meal and where that fits into the chronic inflammation reduction program.
Yeah. So you'll hear it said in that, I think it's Dr. Svoboda who first started saying this, that when you cook foods together in the pot, they work out their differences. So you get like this well-harmonized product. And so the idea, especially in a pressure cooker, because it's the pressure that just makes sure that everything in that pot is really well cooked and that the moisture gets in there, because with our Vata type digestion, it's the dry quality that makes things hard to digest. And anytime something is hard to digest, we run into this problem of potentially getting ama in the stomach, because something's not breaking down. And so the one pot meal is actually breaking everything down. So it's a little bit pre-digested when it goes into the stomach. And that's why it's like revered in Ayurveda to eat these stews, these kind of one pot meals. There's plenty of moisture. They're really well harmonized. And the spices, that's the thing with these spices that we're always going on about: the cumin, coriander, fennel, ginger, turmeric, because they create the optimal conditions in the stomach for digestion. So when we optimize the conditions in the stomach, we are that much less likely to get any ama. And even when someone already has systemic or chronic inflammation, when they stop producing new ama, they're creating this window for the body to do what it does naturally, which is to digest the systemic ama. So it's not like you have to, you don't have to have already known this 10 years ago for it to be helpful now.
Yeah. People can start feeling better right away.
Absolutely. Yeah. Even when the inflammation's already set in, the one pot meals and the really digestible food is still an avenue getting back into health.
Yeah. Hi, it's Kate with Yoga Healer. Most of my life, I struggled with body weight. I'm a Pitta Kapha constitution, which means with the Pitta part, I have a strong appetite. And with the Kapha part, I love eating, and I love that feeling of feeling full. There's a very simple habit I learned, but it took me a longer time to learn than I find it takes me to teach other people. And this is the habit of intermittent fasting. I wrote a guide on it lately, and it's at yogahealer.com/intermittent-fasting-guide. And it's a 60-page ebook that I've designed after guiding hundreds of people into the habit of intermittent fasting for their body type. So if you're a Vata Pitta, or if you're a Pitta Kapha, or you're a Kapha Vata, you're going to find much more specialized information how to make the transition into intermittent fasting in a way that's going to be the easiest way for you. Now, the yogis have used meal spacing or rhythmic eating or intermittent fasting, it's all the same thing, for eons, literally for 4 millennia. The reason the yogis would use intermittent fasting was because they found that it shifted their system into rest and digest mode. When you're in rest and digest mode, you're not in fight or flight. So if you're trying to actualize bigger goals, you want to be in a calm, steady, focused state of mind. That's one of the big reasons I transitioned into intermittent fasting, growing a global organization, leading the team, leading my course members, being a mother. All of these things required me to step into another level of intentional living, of focus, of deeper sleep, of deeper rejuvenation. And I found that intermittent fasting, it not only checked all those boxes off, but it also checked off this underlying perpetual war I was having with my own appetite and desire to eat a lot. Through intermittent fasting, I'm easily at my ideal body weight. I'm able to focus. I'm stronger when I ride my bike for hours up mountains. In the intermittent fasting for your body type guide that I wrote, I'll talk to you about how to make the transition and how to use intermittent fasting for people of different ages, whether you're a teenager, a young adult, a middle-aged adult, or you're in your elder years. There's also information on socializing. Like, how do you socialize with intermittent fasting? What does that start to look like when you're eating on a different schedule than maybe the people that you spend the most time with? I really walk you through all of the lessons learned I've had, not just in my own personal experience, but also guiding hundreds of other people in my Living Ayurveda course and in my body course into intermittent fasting. The guide is only $5.70. I made it super affordable, so you're not making a choice between whether you should buy this guide or not. It's simple, and you can read it online. And what you're going to find is that if you want a little bit of extra support, you'll be invited into the intermittent fasting course at a greatly reduced price. in general, just start with a guide. It really is my brain dump of all that I've learned in the years of intermittent fasting, how my clothes fit me better now in my 40s than they did in my 20s. What you'll find through the intermittent fasting guide is you'll get to know more about your metabolic type. You'll get to know more about intermittent fasting, but you'll also understand more about why the yogis have used this habit for so long and how you really have two operating systems, fight or flight or rest and digest, and how to decrease your stress through this very simple habit of intermittent fasting. So go to yogahealer.com/intermittent-fasting-guide to get your intermittent fasting guide. Namaste and have a great day. So a few things here. So we've got a simple, easy way to make food. We've got a simple, easy way to make food that's easy to digest. And what I really look at in terms of like most modern working people is that we're in a bit of a struggle with convenience and time. And yet, like the problem with prepared foods and processed foods, as opposed to like just getting good at like a couple instant pot meals a week, right? Where like you have your go-bys. Well, a few things I want to say about this. Like one is we tend to eat in patterns, right? Like people know what they order from their favorite Thai food or favorite pizza restaurant or whatever. Like we kind of eat, like we're not off. Most of us aren't like, oh, I'm going to try the thing I've never tried before as their go-to, right? Instead, it's like, this is what I get from there. And the same thing's often true at home with like, these are the things that we normally eat. And some of these meals, whether we're ordering out or buying prepared foods at the grocery store or making similar recipes at home, some of these meals are going to create ama, or that which is hard to digest in the body. And if we could just slide out like one or two of those as a regularity and slide in one or two simple Instapot meals that are helping to like decongest the system, like debog the system, then like over time that could be fairly remarkable. Like that could really be the difference between developing one of those long-term chronic diseases that we talked about, or help if you already have one of those. Oh, I forgot diabetes, that was in there too, or obesity. Starting to rewind that pattern just from a place of what are we eating regularly?
Yeah. And I love how you point out the patterns, because that is definitely how I eat. I'm not reinventing the wheel all the time. Even the way I use my Instant Pot, there's like 5 things I do with it. Okay,
so tell us the rest. How else are you using your Instant Pot?
So I do the Kitchery, right? And then, as I said, I leave it in the pot until the pressure goes away. Yep. And that's like 20 minutes. So this whole thing will take like an hour. And I like baby kale a lot. I just think it's like so nutritious, and I can get it locally. People are doing it in greenhouses all year now. So you can get like nice baby kale. And so I'll open it and put like 2 handfuls of baby kale in, and put the top back on, kind of leave it there, get the table ready, that kind of thing. And you just leave it for like 5 minutes and then open it up, stir it in, and it will have wilted. You can't cook the baby kale in the Instant Pot. It will like dissolve. People make that mistake a lot. So the baby greens go in at the end, like spinach or baby kale. And that's just like, it's so awesome for busy people because you don't have to chop, like there's nothing. And it's really high quality, like high nutrition food. So I do that all the time. And I also do dal in the Instant Pot, and the yellow dal, especially for vegetarian.
Oh, wait. No, we have to go back to how much ghee are you adding? So once they take it out, they add a couple Yeah.
Yeah. Good call. So this is where, depending on how busy I am, sometimes I'll do a tempering, and sometimes I'll just stir the salt and the ghee into the pot. And so for that amount, I'd probably put 2 tablespoons.
Okay.
For like that family that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And a teaspoon of pink salt. Some people might like a little bit more, and that's okay. And so I just put that in at the end when I stir the baby kale in.
Okay.
So tablespoons of ghee, teaspoon or a little more of pink salt. And when I'm being fancy, which is actually a lot of the time, because I think it makes it that much tastier to do this, and it only takes a couple minutes. I have a little frying pan. I put the 2 tablespoons of ghee in there. And in the winter, I like cumin seed and mustard seed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll do
a little crunch too, right? Because then you're going to get a little crunch in the texture.
Yeah, and it looks so nice. That's the other thing is it really adds, because otherwise it's a bit of a yellow mush.
Yellow mush with some green things in it.
Yellow soup mush. And so the mustard seeds, I love. I use the black mustard seed, toast them, and they bring this like smoky kind of toasted flavor. So nice. And they are a little heating, so if people have any trouble with acidity, not so much. Maybe they could use fennel seed, coriander seed, that kind of thing. And so whatever seeds, we are best for that person, half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of each in the ghee. And it just takes like less than 5 minutes. You just saute it on medium till you can smell the spices. You have to take care you don't burn them.
Not till it's smoking.
Right, because they'll burn. So stay right there, and I kind of I like shake the pan a couple times, and then you turn off the heat, take it right off, and you can pour it right in hot like that into the dal, and it will kind of sizzle a little bit. So just make sure your face isn't right in it or anything. You put that in, stir that up. If you have time, if you let it stand for 5 minutes, that's ideal. After you add the tempering, and then like everything just like comes together and you get this really creamy kind of toasty flavor. So that extra step is awesome, but sometimes I don't do it. It depends, depends on the day.
Okay, awesome. So other things you cook are things that like dal, like beans that are hard to break down in general, because that's where we have the advantage of the Instant Pot over just cooking on the stove.
Right. And the dal, again, split yellow mung beans do not take long. I like them to cook for an hour though in a dal, and that's where it gets creamy. And so,
how long is it on pressure for?
I'll pressure cook it for 15 minutes. Same as Kitchery. That's kind of my magic. And I've told a few of my students about this, and they kind of love that there's a porridge setting on there.
What do you use that for?
I use it for everything. I all my Kitchery, all my dal, I use porridge. And so you know how it's got the 3, you can kind of go like small, medium, large.
Yeah.
You with it. And so for when I'm using the split mung bean in the Kitchery or in the dal, I put it on the first porridge.
Okay.
And if I'm using the whole green mung bean that hasn't been soaked.
Yeah, which is like a heavier, bigger bean.
Yeah, I put it on the middle one.
Okay.
And the third setting on porridge is for like oat groats or wheat berries.
So the super hardest to penetrate grains.
Right. Like the really big stuff that needs to like cook for a while. And so I think that setting is like 25 minutes.
Okay.
Which is, So I use porridge for if people want to just use the button instead of thinking about the time, just porridge. Yeah. And I use that for Kitchery and dal on that sort of first lighter porridge setting, which I believe is 15 minutes pressure cook. And so that was how I got started with using the machine. That's all I used was that one button.
That's awesome. I think we all have that story with Instant Pot. Is like we know like one or two things, right? And then there's like, but it does all these other things. And I love this conversation for exploring that.
Absolutely. So the dal is super simple. It's the same. You just don't put the rice, And I'll often do a cup of dal. I like a kind of soup, so I'll do 6 cups of water. You can do 5. I just think that if people are new to doing it, it's better to err on the side of too much water. Yeah. Because it'll burn inside the machine and it'd just be a bummer to clean. So one cup to 6 is going to give you kind of a soupy dal. And I'll often I like carrots in dal. So
for those who aren't as familiar with dal,
it's basically a lentil soup, but it's the thing that makes dal so cool is that the lentils do not retain their shape. Each bean, it breaks up into like a creamy. It's almost like it can be like mashed potato kind of consistency if you make it thicker, and then it can be served like on top of grains instead of as a soup. So the amount of water that you put, you get a completely different food. If you want a dal soup, you do the 6 cups. You can go as low as 4 cups of water and get this like very thick, rich, almost gravy-like, very high protein, high mineral as well. Like these legumes have a lot of iron in them too, which is great, especially for the ladies. And just serving that on top of the grain or rice or vegetables is lovely. I'll take a wide bowl, and like for people who need more of a cup of balancing diet, where we're trying to get them to eat more like greens and legumes, this is great because you've got this wide bowl. You fill it half with like a sauteed kale, lemon and black pepper and salt. And then the other half of the bowl can just be this like thick kind of yellow gravy, and it looks beautiful, the green and the yellow. And then you can kind of like, go between the two and like have a little kale and dip it in the dal and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And it's not just a soup, because I know some people feel like they get tired of eating like watery soup and thicker. Yeah. So get that with 4 cups of water and 1 cup of a yellow split mung bean.
Okay, great. I just want to say too, like for people that like might not be, or even for people that are trying to be gluten-free, or people that just know that, you wake up after eating something with gluten in it or a lot of gluten, like maybe it's just like a lot of bread or noodles or whatever. You notice like your face is puffy in the morning and like your eyes get a little baggy and whatnot. Dal, that might be a great time to have, like, maybe I'll have dal tonight for dinner with some greens like Kate just described.
Right. Yeah. And for people who aren't breaking down grains and carbohydrates right now, it's a really good, the dal is awesome.
Let's talk a little bit about why dal for people that usually have a hard time digesting beans. Because a lot of people think, oh, I can't digest beans because I get gas or I get bloated or can't do chili or can't do and a lot of people associate pressure cookers or Instant Pots with things like chili or like black beans or kidney beans or things that are bigger beans.
Right. Yeah. Which we tend to use pressure cookers for because it speeds up the process so much. But those big beans, they have like thick skins, and that thick skin, it's got the hard, rough, it's hard to digest. If you don't have a super strong digestive fire, then you can end up with these chunks, these little kind of pieces of the skin that don't break down. And that's where we get the gas and the bloating and in all sorts of signs of indigestion. And so you don't have to be a Vata type to not digest beans well, actually. If you don't have a strong digestive fire, you use something like a kidney bean, the skins on there are really like chewy, and it really takes a lot of breaking down. And so dals are often made with the small size bean, like the red lentil, which is a brown lentil that's had the skin taken off.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, totally. It's like this. It's the same as how we process the mung bean.
So what are green lentils then? They're different than brown and red?
Right. You get like the French or French lentils. Yeah, the green ones. Yeah, those are naturally tiny, naturally small.
Okay.
Which got it. Them also great and easy to digest.
So then red lentils are easier to digest than brown lentils because the skin's off.
Yeah.
And they're prettier.
Like for example, I can't eat brown lentils. I will get like the worst farts. And red lentils are totally fine. So it's the same with the green mung bean. We take the skin off, we split the bean, and then you get these little yellow discs. And because the skin's not there, it's easier to digest. So people who can't do like the big beans, like chickpeas or white beans or kidneys, might find that they can do a dal that's made with a split mung bean or a red lentil. And so those are in my kitchen. Those are the two. I like big jars of those two. And I just stick them in the Instant Pot all the time. Sometimes I add vegetables. Sometimes I do vegetables on the side.
You mean like roots in this case? You mean in the Instant Pot?
Yeah. And Kate, what works really good in the Instant Pot is celery, actually. So and that's something I've discovered is that because again, when I go to like the main farmer's market, our celery is like super hardy.
Yeah.
Thick, and it's like I couldn't even eat it raw. I feel like a horse kind of chewing it.
Yeah. It gets like those like long strands of Yeah.
So I will chop stalks of celery up into like 1-inch square kind of pieces, kind of big, like chunky, and I will pressure cook it in there with the dal for the full 15 minutes.
Wow.
It comes out so so nice because the celery maintains its shape. So you get these like chunks of,
and it's like super hydrated, right? It's like these little moist.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. So I've been
Moisture bombs in your dal.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do that a lot because the thing with the roots is like carrots, you have to make big chunks so that they don't kind of disappear.
Disintegrate. Yeah. Because otherwise they'll just kind of like disintegrate into the soupy soup.
They
the soupy
will
dal.
if you pressure cook something for 15 minutes, like carrots, sweet potatoes, even butternut squash will kind of go away. So that's where some people only pressure cook for 10 minutes.
Okay. If they want to maintain the shape of their vegetables in there.
Yeah, the shape of the veggies a little bit. But I've got this, I need to cook my beans, like seriously. Or I'll
no joke. And I should too. Even though I'm pitta kapha, like I should too. Because I just otherwise will get really farty. Like really farty. Like you wouldn't believe how much air. That's how I feel like. Like my body's like, wow, air. Okay, yeah, we can build a lot of air from beans that are hard to digest.
Yeah.
A special talent of mine.
That is, I think, why I use the baby kale and the baby spinach so often, because they work nicely. And I can cook the dal into this really creamy soup and then just add the greens at the end. And that works. And there, some people do all this crazy stuff where they release the pressure and then add something and then bring the pressure.
Oh my gosh. Have you seen those cookbooks where it's like pressure cooker in 120 steps? You can make this cooked chicken with yellow rice. And I'm like, why would you use a pressure cooker?
I don't like that.
Why would you use an Instant Pot?
Yeah. Every time you do a quick release with the pressure, it makes a lot of smell in your house.
Yeah.
Of the food. So I don't like I like to just let it naturally come down, which takes at least 10 minutes, sometimes 20. Yeah. And you'll see the little metal piece that pops up when it's at pressure, comes down, and then that it's done. You can take the top off. I prefer that to turning the dial and letting the steam come out.
Yeah.
Because you get chunks of.
Yeah. You get moisture in the air. It's got food smell in it. Yeah, I hear you. Well, and I think the whole point, I really do think like where the Instant Pot has hit the market is convenience, right? It's easier to cook food that's not going to create inflammation in your body. It's easier to cook food at home. It's easier to cook food ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Which brings me to one of my most popular, most beloved recipes is beet pickle, which I recommend all the time, especially spring cleanser. I was trying to get the beets
and I mean, I personally like the beet has solved my constipation. Like if there's like one food that solved constipation for me, it would be the beloved beet. And I used to hate beets.
Yeah.
Until I realized what they could do for me. And then I'm like, you know what? Wow. And then your palate changes of the foods that heal your body. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. That food's amazing. Okay. So how do you make pickled beets?
So I hate peeling beets. So I never do it. I hate grating them. Like it's just too pink and then your hands get pink. And so I used to boil the beets whole, which would take over an hour. And you have to sit there because if it boils over, you got pink water everywhere. And so now I take the Instant Pot and it comes with this little steamer ring.
Yep.
It's just about an inch tall. I put that in the bottom with about an inch of water. And then I put my beets on it. I'll take like a pound of beets whole. I just rinse them off. I don't even wash them like intensely because they're going to kind of get clean when they get cooked.
Yeah.
So I like barely rinse them. I put them in, close the top, pressure cook them for 10 minutes.
Okay.
And I just leave them there. I let the pressure come down on its own. And I find it's perfect. Even for big beets, the 10 minutes it'll work. It'll come out pretty good. And then I take the top off. I take them out. I pour the whole thing in the sink because it's still pretty hot.
In a strainer?
I just toss the whole thing in the sink. Yeah. Like I pour it out, because they're too hot to touch.
Right. But are you pouring it into a bowl or in your sink?
Right into the sieve, nothing.
Clean sink.
Yeah, clean sink. I just pour the beets and the beet water and sometimes the strainer will fly out.
Yeah, everything's going to fly out. Yeah.
I just pour it in there. And I just let them sit there and cool down. And if you want, you can run them under cold water, but it depends on if you want to work with them right away. But I usually just let them sit there. And so this is something I might do like, in the morning kind of thing. And then I might
Sure.
come back at lunchtime and make the pickle. And you'll find that because they're so well cooked, the skin is going to peel right off.
Right. It just peels off.
Yep. So I chop off the top and the bottom, just those little woody pieces. The skin, just with one movement, boop, the whole skin will
Which
peel.
is kind of fun.
It is. It's very satisfying. It's like, goodbye, skin. I'm done with you. Yes, I'll do that with all the beets, and then I put them on the cutting board, and I get two 16-ounce mason jars with good, clean covers, and I cut the beets into sticks, like half-inch broad kind of sticks. You can do half moons. I like the stick personally, and then I put the sticks should fit in a pound of beets. The sticks will fit into 2 jars. And then I pour apple cider vinegar into the jar.
To cover.
Sometimes I add, not even, because that's a lot of vinegar.
It's a lot of vinegar. So yeah, okay, keep going.
I would say I would put about 1.5 inches of
into each jar.
Yep, in each jar. Sometimes I add a little like powdered coriander. Sometimes I add pink salt and black pepper. Sometimes I just the vinegar. And I love to use half balsamic and half apple cider vinegar. If you want it sweeter, that works, And then you put the top on, you shake the jars.
Okay.
You can eat it immediately if you want. And it'll last for like 3 weeks, these pickles.
And they don't have to be submerged. You just, every now and then you give them a shake?
Exactly. Every time, once a day, I'll give them a shake. Sometimes I flip them over every other day. I flip them, and I find I don't have any problems. And then I'm not like wasting all this vinegar. And I'll reuse the vinegar usually one more time, and then I'll toss it.
Yeah, and it's too red.
It's just like it's starting to get a little funky with the beets sitting in it. Yeah, and so it's like a quick pickle.
Awesome.
And it's so awesome for stagnation in the digestive tract, which we tend to get in the spring, kind of coming up, or even now for some people. So I just put like a little spoonful, like probably 3 sticks. So if you had that bowl with the greens and the dal, and then you put a couple sticks of these pink pickled beets, it's like, so you get all your colors.
All your colors.
Vinegar hit, and it's just so tasty. And
you get all your tastes and
exactly.
And now we're actually, just to pull this all together, now we're actually Ayurvedic cooking, because we're cooking at home and we're getting the 6 tastes in, and we're eating something that's actually digestible for the body.
Right. And I think that like stagnation in the digestion, if somebody's kind of coming off of a processed diet, they might be a little clogged, and it's
maybe a little
moving. Yeah. And I find when people shift to a home cooked diet, it's often lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying less oil, less salt, less, and even less like oils that are rancid or nuts that are rancid or like that we don't even know. Exactly. It's like the mayo and the guac, like just less random, heavy, gucky, sticky stuff.
Random use of fats. Yeah. So I find that sometimes when people shift to this home cooking and the lighter diet, they might get a little constipated in the beginning because the body's used to like all these kind of pushing out all these bad fats.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Making them kind of have these greasy but regular stools.
Yeah.
Shift. That's where the beet pickle can come in and kind of mobilize that bile.
Right.
Get things moving.
Right, especially when people have more fried foods in their diet, right? And then on people, like the cleaner they eat, then they eat fried foods and they get the runs. So it's kind of to the point that you're talking about, where the body's just like, get this out.
Yep, exactly.
So then you switch to home cooking. Pickled beets are going to keep things moving.
Yep.
Awesome, Kate. Man, I think we've given people some good places to at least start with their Instant Pot, or if they're using an Instant Pot, shift more to some of Kitchery dals, easy to digest. I would say it's like anti-inflammatory at-home cooking for the family.
Yeah, and I should mention that there is a timer on the Instant Pot, and you can tell it to start in like 2 hours.
Oh, right.
want. Yeah.
You can tell it when to make your, great.
Yeah, your afternoon's going to get away with you. You know, it can be good to put it in there in the morning or at lunch break. And, you know, I'll tell it to start cooking in like 6 hours, which is like, 4 o'clock. And then I'm going to eat around 5.
Love that.
You get a rhythm going that way.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I often in the morning, I like to spend time with Indy before she goes to the school and the gym, because I'm already in the kitchen in the morning when she's eating. And it like gives me, it's like I'm with her, but I'm also doing something so that our food's ready later. And that's what I often find is like I make the food for the day in the morning, or at least I get it in momentum so that there's not this random we're hungry, it's 5 p.m. or whatnot.
Right. Yeah, because that'll get you. That if you're not like organized a little bit, that'll totally get anybody in the afternoon. That's where I know better than to let if I don't have something ready that I'm going to eat that day, or something just getting started, I know I'm going to end up in trouble and wanting to like get a pizza or something at like 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. And the Instant Pot, it really keeps that from happening to me, because I don't have. It's like, oh, I didn't soak it. Oh, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
I just throw it in there. I might. Yeah, that's what's so cool about it. And then like anybody can do it and go anywhere and do anything all day and have food when you get home. It's like ready. So it's great.
Awesome. Everyone, this has been Kate O'Donnell of kateodonnell.yoga and ayurvedicliving.institute. And on ayurvedicliving.institute, she has her cooking classes. She's written cookbooks. I think I've interviewed you on every cookbook. So you can also get more of me and Kate talking about what she makes in the kitchen on the Yoga Healer podcast. Kate, thanks a million. It's been a blast hanging.
Always love it, Kate. It's fun to dork out about food again too.
Totally.